Easter. And so we're going to look at the crucifixion from different points of views over the next couple weeks. Today we're going to look at Barabbas. It's a important story in Scripture. A lot of stories in the Gospels actually only take place in certain Gospels. So if you look at the lady at the well in John, or you look at certain stories presented in the Gospels, a lot of the Gospel writers only present them stories in their own Gospel. The story of Barabbas, however, is in all four Gospels. So, when you look at this story, there's a lot to it that I think we can, one, gain from it, and two, it was important enough that all four Gospel writers talked about it. So why did all four Gospel writers look and say, hey, this story is extremely important? I think it's important, and I think they wrote about it because it was one of those moments that they seen in two different ways. One, the power of the gospel that's narrated through the story of Barabbas, but then also the idea that someone who was so innocent was crucified when somebody so guilty was let go. And there's power in that because that's the story of the gospel. That's how the gospel reads, right? That the guilty is pardoned and the innocent is crucified. And so, as we go into this Easter series, I wanted to make sure that we understand this once for all and what that means. When you read through the book of Hebrews, you're going to come across this phrase, this once for all. It's not re-crucified, like some people try to paint it. It's not that he continues to be re-crucified. Some people teach that actually about communion, that it is a re-crucifixion every time you take that. And that's not the case because Scripture is clear that he died once for all. It is once for all mankind as to what we are talking about in this series. So this Easter series that we're in is something that it took place once. There's one crucifixion and there's one resurrection. He don't get re-crucified and he don't re-resurrect. And so as we go through this and we look at Barabbas, I want you to understand just what is happening and how the story of Barabbas is about a second chance. It's about the core of what the gospel looks like. It's grace by the only one who could offer it. And the interesting thing about this story, as we begin to prepare for Easter, is that when Jesus stands before Pilate, he stands before the crowds. Would it have been very easy for him to call on the Father and to have himself released from captivity? Yeah, it would have been. As he hung on the cross, he could have called, what does it say? Legions of angels to have himself removed. But we forget that because of Christ and the grace, the love that he has for us, we are like Barabbas, the guilty who gets set free. And so I'd like to walk through this story and what it actually means to us. Because oftentimes when we read it, we overlook it. We read through the four Gospels and it gets passed over. And so actually, if you break down his name, it's even interesting what his name is. Bar would mean son. So have you ever heard of Bar Jonah? That would be the son of Jonah. Now the interesting thing, if you break this down, so you break bar off of the front of it, son of, right? There's usually a hyphen. What is Abba? Father. So Barabbas' name means son of the Father. Well, what significance does that have? Because actually the Son of the Father is the one that's crucified, right? But we, who fit in this story, the guilty, are also children of who? The Father. And so we fit into this story. Do we necessarily understand everything that's happening? No. Is every detail of the story hashed out through the telling of it? No. But it's important because it shows up in all 4 Gospels. And I hope by the time we walk out of here, we realize just how important this story really is. The view of the crucifixion from Barabbas would have been completely different from anyone else. He's set free. He's an insurrectionist. He's a murderer. He is not known as a good prisoner. And we don't know much about Barabbas, but one of the things we do know is this is not his first offense. According to history, he was a reoffender. He was known as a bad guy, right? And so, what's going on in this, right? Jesus has made a name for himself among the Jewish leaders. They don't like him. They want him dead. And so he's gotten into a little bit of trouble, but he was considered a Jewish rabbi, which is a Jewish teacher. He was a Jew. He was a rabbi that was well respected from a very young age. You remember the story about Jesus where his parents lose him? And where did they find him? Back in his father's house, teaching, right? And the other Jewish leaders were actually astonished at what he could teach at a very young age. He was a well-respected rabbi. He started to gain a following. The Jews did not believe that he was the Messiah. They did not believe he was the Son of God. They thought it was blasphemy, and so they wanted him killed. The Pharisees and the teachers, after all, he eats with tax collectors. He hangs out with the less thans, right? He is found among prostitutes. The Jewish leadership did not like that. They did not like it that he hung out with sinners. But those who are sick need a doctor. And so he shows up on the scene, and the threat gets established. They see Jesus as a threat to their power and stature, to their ability to continue on with what they are doing. He heals on the Sabbath. He forgives sin. And in the Jewish world, that's only something God himself can do. And so they say, we need to kill him. In Matthew 23, verses 2 and 3, it says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Or it might say teachers of the law, depending on what version you have. The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, for they preach, but do not practice. This is a teaching of Jesus. So all the Jewish leadership who would hear this message would instantly feel threatened by the one who gives it. And he's saying, but do not do what they do, right? Don't be like them, for they preach but do not practice. This is a problem with religion, right? This is one of the things that people say all the time. You say, well, why won't you go to church? Because they're a bunch of hypocrites. And you know what the thing is? Jesus agrees. They preach, but they do not practice, right? And so Jesus was saying, hey, listen, be doers and not just someone who tells somebody else about the plank in their eye, right? And so as you read through this, you understand that Jesus set himself up to be an enemy at the gates, to be someone who rose up against the powers at hand. But the interesting thing is when you see this, and if you go down to verse 15, look what he says. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you travel across sea and land to make single proselytes, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. It's not very nice words, right? He's not making friends with this. And so it sets him up to be their enemies. And when you say things like that, it doesn't really put you on anyone's good side of leadership. But the interesting thing that you see in this story is Jesus did not care, because he was known to be not only speaking truth, he was the truth. And so when he spoke these things, they wanted to get rid of Jesus. And that's the background to the story of Barabbas. You see, Barabbas was a ruthless murderer who was anti-government. And yet, in this story, you see that they would rather have a murderer set free than an innocent man. You see, the Jews didn't actually have the power to kill Jesus. They were under Roman rule at this time. And so they could recommend what they wanted done, but they could not execute it. And so what do? They bring him before Pilate, right? Pilate's got him. He's in under the authority of Pilate. And really, Pilate is trying everything he can to do what? To get him released. You see, the custom was, during Passover, the ruler would release one criminal. They would release one. The people would choose and they would release one. So the Jewish religious leaders drag him before the Roman governor, and they're looking for permission to kill him. They don't want him just put in under the authority in a jail cell. They don't want him under the jail cell. They want him dead. Get him out of our hair. He's causing too many problems. People are following him. We don't want him around. The interesting thing is, Rome does not like being told what to do, especially by Jews, because Jewish people were under the authority of Rome. So now Pilate has a predicament, because Pilate's wife has said, hey, I had a dream about this guy. He's innocent. He has done nothing. Pilate's trying to wash his hands of it. And on the other side, he has a predicament, because if he lets him go, now the Jewish people could have an uprising, and it makes him look weak. But on the same coin, the same token, if he does what the Jews say, they assume, hey, we have authority over Pilate. He is in a very bad situation. So if you flip over to Mark, chapter 15, 6 through 15, we're going to read that. It says, now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked, and among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews? He's saying, this is my opportunity to free Jesus. Do you want me to release your king? Well, what is their response going to be? It's not our king. What do you mean the King of the Jews? He's not a king. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews? For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priest had delivered him up. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him released for them Barabbas instead. This story kills me because Jesus, knowing what he came to do, standing before his own people, and they say, "Give me the murderer. Release the murderer. Release that thug," right? The one who causes all this trouble. Jesus came to save the souls of man, and he stands before his people, and what do they say? Crucify him. Have you ever been charged with something that you didn't do? Whether it be as a kid or now. You get in trouble for something, and you know beyond a doubt you did not do it. What does that feel like? Have you ever had friends that turned on you? Or that you thought were friends, right? And then they do something to you? What does it feel like to be stabbed in the back? Not good, right? Now imagine being Jesus, knowing that you came to die for the people standing in front of you. And the only thing they can say is crucify him. Release the murderer and crucify him. And he never opened his mouth. I know what I would be saying. If I'm standing up there with Barabbas, I'm saying, are you kidding me? I've done nothing wrong. And you're telling me you want this murderer released? I'm saying kill this guy. Give him the death penalty. But instead, Jesus stands there. And the son of the Father, Barabbas, walks free. Do you want the king of the Jews? For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man that you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" They can't bring a charge against him. The only thing they can do is yell, "Kill him. Crucify him." Not only kill him, we want him put to death in the most vicious, non-humane way possible. Do you know anything about the cross? Do you know it was designed to be a torture device down to your very last breath? It was a rough piece of wood that would stab in your back, right? There would be splinters going in you. You have stakes pounded into you to hang you on this thing. You're hung in a way that it is designed to suffocate you. That as you hang, you can no longer breathe. And so you have to push off of your feet, which are staked to a piece of wood, and you push off of them to lift yourself up to get a breath. It was a Roman torture device that he was to be hung on. It was not merely some cute thing that we hang around our neck or put in our ears. It was a Roman torture device that was designed to kill people slowly and over a period of a long time. And the interesting thing about it is he was willing to not say a word, even though he knew what was about to happen. That's grace. That's love for people. That even those that were yelling, "Crucify him," he just stood there knowing he had one mission: to save the souls of men. What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. And then you go on. We're not going to read anymore. But it tells you what happened. Jesus gets mocked. He is beaten. He's forced to carry his cross, right? Pilate had this idea. Maybe I can get Jesus off the hook if I can get them to realize he's done nothing wrong. And they wouldn't do it. Crucify him, they said. Barabbas, an insurrectionist, a murderer, a notorious prisoner. Has anybody seen The Passion of the Christ? That's a pretty, I don't know this for sure, but how they depict Barabbas is how kind of I've always pictured him, right? He's like a filthy, mean-looking man who probably, he was well known, but he's probably scarred up and beaten a little bit, because anybody who's that rough had a rough life. They're probably not easy on the eyes, right? He's a very bad-looking man. He's the type of man that when you see him, you know, I should probably go to this side of the street, right? We've seen those type of people. You think, I don't know if I want to engage right now with this person. That's Barabbas. This is who they're choosing to set free over the one who has done nothing. You see, grace and love is shown through Barabbas. A nasty-looking man who was hateful, who was probably going to commit murder again, who was a notorious prisoner and an insurrectionist, is set free. That is Barabbas. It makes me wonder, when he is put into chains, Jesus, and he's standing there, he's under the authority of Rome, it makes me wonder, did he ever think twice? I would, right? I think everybody in here would. You hear his prayer in the garden, right? And that strikes me every time I hear that he is going to be crucified. He said, Father, if there is any other way, take this cup from me. And then he says this, but if it's your will, I will bear that cup. If it's your will, Father, to put me through this, and there's no other way, it's your will. You see, the Roman beatings were more than just physical pain. It was more than just bringing people to their knees. It was making people unrecognizable. It was beating them within inches of life. You see, the Roman knew how to torture people. Rome knew how to make an impression. And that's what Rome was good at. Did you know Rome would line the streets coming in to cities with men on crosses only to make a point that if you don't fall under our power, our authority, and get along, this is what's going to happen to you. Even to the point where they were willing to do it to innocent men. One who was completely innocent, who had never sinned, they put on a death sentence. It makes me wonder sometimes, how old do you think, we know roughly how old Jesus was. How old was Barabbas? Was he older? Was he younger? 21, 22? I mean, was he an experienced criminal with a rap sheet that had done this his whole life? Was he 40 or 50? Right? What was Barabbas? And we don't know a whole lot, but when I think about this story, did he have a family? Did he have a mom who cared? We don't really know, do we? He had a mom. At one point, Barabbas was a tiny little baby that was held and loved, right? Something had went wrong in Barabbas' life. Did his mom on many occasions try to persuade him to stop doing what he was doing, to live a different lifestyle, right? To go down a different path? Maybe his dad wasn't present. Maybe she was a single mom. But he did not listen. He turned 21 in prison, doing life without parole. Right? We don't know that, but that's a good song. We don't know much about Barabbas, but I can tell you what we do know. Jesus had grace and mercy extended to him. This is the power of the gospel. We would condemn people for a lot less than what Barabbas had done. We say this a lot, right? They made their bed. They need to lie in it. The interesting thing is Jesus saw Barabbas and did not even defend himself so Barabbas could be set free. It's easy for Barabbas to just become a name, an image. But do you know what Jesus saw him as? A person. An image bearer of God. One created in the image of God. See, what we do is we say, yeah, he looks pretty ruthless to me. We don't know his background. We don't know what went on in his life. And yet we're really quick, or I am, to view Barabbas as just another bad guy. Not worth saving, right? It's easy to do when you look at Barabbas. He's a lost, lonely, deserted, broken, hopeless, and guilty man. That's Barabbas. He knew what his actions could lead to. He knew what he was doing, right? He knew that he had destructive behavior. His choices, his life, his failures, his wrongs should be held against him. But Jesus says, actually, I'm going to die for that one. I'm going to die in his place. That's the story of Barabbas. It's the story of us. That Barabbas would look on that cross a little different, knowing that an innocent man went to it instead of him. Maybe we're not murderers. Maybe we're not insurrectionists. But there are a lot of things we can learn from Barabbas. Maybe we say, well, we're not near that bad. All sin leads to death, is what Scripture says. All have fallen short of the glory of God. I wonder if the same is true for each of us, that we make excuses as why we're not that bad. There's people that are way worse than the things I do, right? G.K. Chesterton says this: whatever else men have believed, they have all believed that there is something the matter with mankind. There's something wrong with that person. There's something wrong. Freud, Plato, Karl Marx, Ralph Nader, Martin Luther King Jr., and Gandhi, and Jesus all agree with this: something is terribly wrong with us and cries out to be put right. Now, the interesting thing is, the only one in that list who was actually willing to die for the ones that had something wrong with them was who? Jesus. That's the only one. It wasn't Gandhi. It wasn't Karl Marx. It wasn't Freud. He was willing to die for a murdering insurrectionist. So what do we learn from it? Isaiah 53:6 says, we all like sheep have gone astray. All of us. Max Lucado says it like this: 4 prison walls thickened with hurt, fear, and hate surround us. We're in jail because of our past, our low-road choices, our high-minded pride, and we have nothing to offer in trade for our lives. We sit on the floor of a dusty cell awaiting the final moment. Our executioner's footsteps echo against the stone walls, head between knees. We don't look up as he opens the door. We don't lift our eyes as he begins to speak. We know what he is going to say. It is time to pay up. I wonder if that's how Barabbas fell. Maybe he didn't. But we can learn from Barabbas that 1, we are saved from our sin. We are saved from our sin by one who didn't speak up, who said, I am willing to die for that person. Max Lucado goes on to say, he says, you are free to go. They took Jesus instead of you. Now that should make us feel some way. To know that we celebrate Easter in a way that is not glorifying to Jesus, right? What is Easter about? The resurrection. That he was willing to go to the cross to set us free from sin and death. 3 days later, he resurrected, right? And to show our gratitude for that, we celebrate with bunnies and eggs. More children in our culture know what the Easter bunny is than what Jesus did for Barabbas. More kids know that they get to hunt Easter eggs on Easter instead of celebrating the resurrection. Do you see the issue? What we celebrate doesn't really reflect, you are free to go, they took Jesus instead of you. The second thing we learned is that it is through grace that we are saved. Saved by grace. Barabbas deserved death. He did nothing to deserve life, and yet he got it because of the grace of Christ. Tony Campolo says this: grace is the unbelievable yet true news that you are accepted, though you are unacceptable. That's grace. That you are accepted even though you are unacceptable. Pilate told the people that they could spare the life of either a murderer named Barabbas or Jesus of Nazareth, and they chose Barabbas. Given the same choice, Jesus, of course, would have chosen to spare Barabbas too. Frederick Buechner. Can you imagine that? If Pilate would have asked, not the crowd, but if Pilate would have asked Jesus, do you want to be set free or do you want Barabbas to go free? Jesus, standing there, knowing what was about to happen, he would have said, set free Barabbas. If I'm standing next to Christ and they said, do you want to be set free or do you want John to be set free? He would say, set free John. That's the message of the gospel. We are saved by grace. It's not anything that we've done. It's not anything that we deserve. If we actually get what we deserve, we're the ones that go to the cross. We're the ones that are put to death. 2 Corinthians 5, and I'm going to end with this. 5:17. If you don't have this highlighted, you should. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. That's what Jesus did through grace. What are we saved for? We learn this through Barabbas. We are made new. You are saved for a new life, radically transformed by Christ. This is the view of the Easter story through the lens of Barabbas. Made new, radically changed. Paul Washer says it like this: you cannot be hit by a semi-truck and not be changed. The same goes for Christ. You cannot encounter Christ and not have a radical transformation in your life. If somebody walks in and they say, sorry, I'm late. I was hit by a semi on the side of the road while I was changing my tire. And they're not dirty, they're not bleeding, they're not broken. What do you say? I don't believe you. I think you're lying. The same goes with Jesus. You cannot meet him and not be radically changed. We are saved for a new life, radically transformed. Grace isn't just about that you are forgiven. Grace is that you are made new, that you are changed. That is the story of Easter. Barabbas received an incredible opportunity that day. I don't really know if he changed. I don't know. But he was still given the opportunity. Our goal is to give other people that opportunity, just as it was given to us. We are to spread the gospel, to glorify Christ, and live a life that is meaningful to that message. Instead of crossing the road from the people that look like they might harm you, guess what? Preach the gospel. When the people show up that have stabbed you in the back, guess what? Preach the gospel. When there's people you don't like, whether it be at home or work, guess what? Preach the gospel. Show grace and loving mercy to everyone.